Claire Hayes had learned to survive on little sleep. As a single mother of a 6-month-old, her nights were a blur of bottles, lullabies, and rocking chairs that never seemed to stop creaking. The exhaustion lived in her bones, yet she pushed forward each morning because Noah, her son, her entire world, depended on her. When the email came offering her an in-person interview for a junior marketing position in Chicago, Claire almost cried. It wasn't glamorous, but it was stable, with health insurance and enough pay to cover rent without relying on late-night freelance jobs. She couldn't afford to say no. So, with Noah strapped to her chest in a sling and a diaper bag packed with military precision, she boarded an early flight from St. Louis. Her nerves thrummed like live wires. Between balancing bottles, her laptop, and Noah's unpredictable fussing, she already felt stretched thin. Still, she whispered to herself, "This is our chance." Settling into her seat, she decided to send her sister a quick text before takeoff. She scrolled through her gallery until she found a recent picture of Noah, dressed in a duck-patterned onesie, gummy smile wide, chubby fists raised like a boxer. Her chest warmed with pride. She tapped the photo, hit share, and chose what she thought was her sister's contact. But in her sleep-deprived haze, she hadn't chosen correctly. A soft ping sounded. Instead of sending the photo privately, she had tapped Airdrop everyone nearby. By the time she realized, dozens of passengers, devices lit up with Noah's cherubic face. A ripple of chuckles and whispered, "Ah," swept through the cabin. Claire's cheeks burned. She tried to stammer an apology to the row around her, wishing she could sink through the floor. But in first class, seat 2A, a man didn't laugh. He didn't smile. He didn't casually swipe the photo away. Alexander Grant, CEO of Titan Systems, a tech empire spanning continents, stared at the screen in his hands as though the air had been punched from his lungs. The man known for commanding boardrooms, intimidating rivals, and never showing weakness suddenly couldn't move. The baby on his phone had his eyes. Not just the same color, storm gray with flecks of silver, but the same intensity, the same wayward tilt. The dimple in the left cheek was his. Even the curl at the crown of the baby's head mirrored a childhood photo his mother used to tease him about. He sat frozen, gripping the phone until his knuckles turned white. This was impossible, or was it? Images flooded his mind, of a woman he had once loved, years ago, before ambition consumed him. A fleeting relationship, tender but short-lived, ended abruptly when she disappeared from his life without explanation. He had buried the ache beneath work, telling himself she had been a detour, nothing more. But now, staring at this child's face, all the walls he had built cracked open. He forced himself to glance toward the economy cabin. His gaze caught the young mother who had boarded earlier, her dark hair falling loose as she soothed the baby strapped against her. Even from a distance, something about her was hauntingly familiar. Claire. The name slammed into him with a force that nearly made him rise from his seat. The plane taxied down the runway, but Alexander wasn't thinking of the billion-dollar deal waiting in Chicago or the investors expecting him. He couldn't think of anything except the impossible truth gnawing at his chest. Could this baby be his? By the time the plane landed, his decision was made. He canceled every appointment, every meeting, every dinner engagement. His assistant protested until he snapped, "Clear my schedule. Book me the next flight back." He needed answers. Claire's day unraveled quickly. The interview in Chicago was a disaster. Noah had been fussy, and though the hiring manager smiled politely, she could tell her distracted answers and constant apologies left a poor impression. By evening, she was drained, her hope shriveled. She rebooked the earliest flight home and trudged back with Noah nestled against her chest, whispering, "We'll figure it out, baby. We always do." What she didn't know was that Alexander Grant was already in the air, heading to the same city she called home. For a man accustomed to boardroom wars, nothing had ever made him more anxious than the thought of knocking on a stranger's door. But this wasn't just a stranger, not anymore. If his suspicion was correct, this was his son. Claire lived in a modest walk up on the quieter edge of town. Past midnight, she finally eased Noah into his crib, humming softly until his tiny body relaxed into sleep. The apartment was small, the rent barely manageable, but it was theirs. She leaned against the wall, exhaling, when a sharp knock rattled the door. Her heart jolted. At this hour, she hesitated, then opened the door a crack, and froze. Standing in the dim hallway, unmistakable even in casual clothes, was Alexander Grant, the billionaire CEO she'd seen on TV, in magazines, in news articles about industry giants. For a split second, her exhausted brain scrambled to explain the impossibility. Maybe she was hallucinating, maybe exhaustion had broken her. Ms. Hayes. His voice was low, measured, yet urgent. It's me, Alexander. We need to talk. Claire's grip on the doorknob tightened. I don't understand. Why are you here? His gaze flickered past her, to the faint sound of a baby stirring in the crib. His throat bobbed, and when his eyes returned to hers, they held a vulnerability she never thought a man like him could possess. Because, he said hoarsely, I think that child might be mine. The world tilted beneath her feet. For months, she had rehearsed this moment in her mind, the moment when she might one day tell him. But she had convinced herself it wasn't worth it. Alexander Grant lived in a world of private jets and power plays. She lived in a world of overdue bills and secondhand strollers. What place could he possibly have in their lives? Her silence stretched, but his expression told her he already knew. She stepped aside. Slowly, Alexander entered the small apartment. He didn't comment on the peeling paint or the secondhand furniture. His eyes went straight to the crib, where Noah lay sleeping. And there, for the first time in his life, Alexander Grant's composure broke. His breath hitched, his jaw clenched, and his hand trembled as he reached toward the rail, though he didn't touch. He simply stared, memorizing every feature of the baby's face. Claire's throat tightened. He wasn't supposed to know, she whispered. I didn't think you'd care. Or that you'd even want to know. Alexander turned, eyes burning. Not want to know, Claire, if I had known. His voice cracked before he steadied it. You should have told me. Tears stung her eyes, but anger flared too. Told you, while you were busy building an empire, traveling the world, barely remembering I existed. I thought I was a distraction to you. You made it clear your work came first. His jaw flexed, shame shadowing his face. I was a fool. I thought I had time. I thought I could come back. Silence pressed between them, broken only by Noah's soft breathing. For a long moment, they stood on opposite sides of a chasm built from years of absence, regret, and fear. Yet the tiny life sleeping in the crib bridged it in ways neither could deny. Finally, Alexander's voice softened. I don't expect forgiveness. I don't even know if I deserve to be in his life. But I can't walk away. Not now. Not after fate literally airdropped his face onto my phone at 30,000 feet. A shaky laugh escaped Claire, half disbelief, half surrender. Trust my luck. My mistake becomes the universe's way of outing me. Her shoulders sagged. She had carried this burden alone for months, convincing herself she was protecting Noah by keeping him hidden from a world of ruthless business headlines. But now, watching Alexander's raw as he looked at his son, a piece of her armor cracked. Noah stirred, blinking awake. His gray eyes, Alexander's eyes, fluttered open, and when Alexander leaned closer, the baby studied him with innocent curiosity. And then, with a gurgle of delight, Noah reached up and grabbed Alexander's finger. The billionaire, the titan of industry, the man who had everything, fell to his knees beside a thrift store crib in a tiny apartment. Tears slipped down his face, unashamed. Claire pressed a hand to her mouth, her own tears spilling silently. For the first time in months, she didn't feel alone. Maybe the universe hadn't made a mistake after all. Part 1. Claire Hayes wasn't reckless by nature. Being a single mother to a 6-month-old boy meant her life ran on discipline. Alarms for feedings, lists for groceries, a color-coded budget pinned to the fridge. She had to be careful, because if she wasn't, who would be? That morning, though, she was already frayed. Noah had been awake half the night, crying with a fever that thankfully broke just before dawn. Claire kissed his damp forehead and whispered, "We're okay, buddy. We'll be okay." She strapped him into his sling and dragged herself to the airport, fueled by lukewarm coffee and a fragile thread of hope. Today wasn't just another day of survival, it was her shot at a new job. A company in Chicago had offered her an interview for a junior marketing position. The pay wasn't dazzling, but it was steady, with benefits. A chance to breathe. She juggled the stroller, diaper bag, and laptop case through security, then onto the plane. As she collapsed into her seat, relief washed through her. She was here. She was trying. Waiting for takeoff, she pulled out her phone and scrolled through her photos, pausing on one that never failed to make her smile. Noah, in his duck print onesie, eyes squinted from laughing, two tiny teeth just breaking through. He looked like sunshine bottled in a baby's grin. Claire tapped, "Share," and selected her sister's name, or so she thought. A second later, her phone pinged with a confirmation she barely registered. The cabin filled with soft murmurs and chuckles. Passengers glanced at their phones, then toward her with knowing smiles. Claire frowned. She looked at her screen, her stomach lurching. She hadn't sent the photo privately. She'd tapped, airdrop, everyone nearby. Oh God, her cheeks flamed. She fumbled to apologize to the man beside her, who just laughed and said, "Cute kid." Others echoed the sentiment. Some held up their phones, showing Noah's grinning face. Claire wanted the floor to swallow her whole. But in first class, seat 2A, one man didn't smile. Alexander Grant, CEO of Titan Systems, stared at his phone as though it had detonated in his hands. The photo glowed on his screen, but it wasn't just the cuteness that gripped him. It was recognition, bone deep, undeniable. The baby's storm gray eyes mirrored his own. The dimple in the left cheek, the stubborn curl of hair at the crown, features Alexander knew intimately, because he'd seen them in the mirror his whole life. For the first time in years, the world's youngest self-made billionaire felt the ground tilt beneath him. He tried to steady his breath, but memories rose unbidden. A woman, dark hair, eyes that laughed even when her lips didn't. A fleeting relationship years ago, one he had buried under ambition and endless work. She had left without explanation. He hadn't chased her, too proud, too consumed by building his empire. But now, this child, his child, the possibility clawed through him, igniting a storm of regret and urgency. He lifted his gaze, searching the economy cabin. There, just a few rows back, a woman cradling the very baby from the photo, exhaustion shadowing her face. His heart lurched. It was her, Claire. By the time the plane landed in Chicago, Alexander's life had already changed. He ignored the calendar alerts buzzing on his watch, the urgent texts from his assistant. Deals worth billions could wait. Because if that baby was his son, nothing else in the world mattered. Before the wheels even touched the runway, he had already cleared his schedule and booked the next flight back. He needed answers. Part 2. Claire's interview unraveled into a disaster. Noah had fussed halfway through, and though she tried to soothe him, her answers came out jumbled. The hiring manager smiled politely, but her eyes said everything. Claire wasn't the right fit. By evening, Claire rebooked an earlier flight home, dragging herself through the terminal with Noah drooping against her chest. She whispered promises into his hair, though her own hope was flickering out. "We'll figure it out, baby. We always do." She didn't know that Alexander Grant was already in the air, headed for the same city, chasing the truth that had shattered his composure 30,000 feet above the ground. For a man accustomed to power, nothing had ever unnerved him more than the thought of knocking on Claire Hayes' door. But if Noah was his son, then he had already wasted too much time. Past midnight, Claire finally climbed the stairs to her modest apartment. She laid Noah in his crib, kissed his forehead, and stood a moment longer just watching him breathe. In the quiet, the weariness seeped out of her bones, replaced by the fragile warmth of love. Then came the knock, sharp, insistent. Her heart jumped. She wrapped her cardigan tighter and cracked the door open, then froze. Standing in the dim hallway, more imposing in jeans and a plain coat than he ever was in magazine spreads, was Alexander Grant. Her lips parted. What are you doing here, Claire?" His voice was steady, but his eyes burned with something raw. "We need to talk." Confusion, fear, disbelief tangled inside her. "I don't understand. How?" His gaze flicked past her, toward the crib in the corner. His throat worked as he swallowed. "Because, I think your son might be mine." The words knocked the air from her lungs. She gripped the doorframe to steady herself. For months she had rehearsed the possibility of this moment. She had told herself he'd never care, that his world of wealth and power was too far from theirs. That she could raise Noah alone. But looking at him now, at the storm in his eyes, so achingly familiar, she knew denial was useless. She stepped aside. Alexander entered slowly, his presence filling the small apartment. He didn't glance at the peeling wallpaper or the secondhand furniture. His eyes went straight to the crib. Noah stirred, little fists curling, gray eyes blinking open. And in that instant, every wall Alexander had built crumbled. His chest tightened, his knees nearly buckled. He crouched beside the crib, studying every detail as if memorizing him, the tiny fingers, the tuft of hair, the sleepy smile. A sound escaped him, half laugh, half sob, when Noah reached up and grabbed his finger with surprising strength. Claire pressed her hand to her mouth, tears stinging her eyes. You should have told me, Alexander said finally, voice breaking. I lost months, his first months. I'll never forgive myself for that. Her defenses rose, sharp from years of survival. Told you, you were too busy chasing the world. I thought I was just another distraction. I didn't think you'd want this. He looked up at her, anguish in his eyes. I was a fool. I thought I had time. But fate had other plans. It literally threw his face onto my phone at 30,000 feet. Despite herself, a laugh slipped from Claire, shaky, disbelieving. Trust me to make the biggest mistake of my life with an airdrop. Silence followed, but not empty. It was thick with unspoken regrets, with possibilities too frightening to name. Finally, Alexander's voice softened. I don't expect forgiveness. I don't even know if I deserve to be in his life. But I'm here, and I'm not walking away. Noah cooed, gripping tighter to Alexander's finger, as if sealing the promise. And for the first time in months, Claire felt she wasn't carrying the weight alone. Maybe, just maybe, the universe hadn't made a mistake after all.